Welcome back to my YouTube channel. And this morning, I want to dive deep into a very interesting and a personal conversation. Today, I want to take you down our experience from the time we started getting therapy for my son. In one of the videos in the past, I did mention what happened from the time we realized that the child was having relapse in milestones until the time we were referred to a developmental clinic and he started going through therapy. So today I want to pick up the conversation from that conversation. I remember I packed that conversation when I had said we started going for therapy. It was every Tuesday and every Friday. So twice per week we would go for therapy after they'd done test. For those who haven't watched the video, I'll put the link to that video in the comment section. Let's get to the business of the day. So when we started going for therapy, he was assessed and they did all the tests to rule out all other conditions. And then he was going for therapy every Tuesday and every Friday. Then on the day that they said they've done all the tests, he started going to therapy in February. And you would go every Tuesday, every Friday. We went there for about 3 months because I remember very well that in April, that's when he got his diagnosis, on the 2nd of April. On that day, that's when they consulted all the professionals, all the neurosurgeons, the pediatricians, all the specialists that were working with him for those past weeks. They'd come up and concluded that indeed Christopher has autism. When they told me that, I was alone in the hospital and my husband was at work, I remember I cried. You know, when they are doing tests, sometimes they will tell you when they're doing those assessments, they would take him to the assessments. They would let him play with toys, assess how he's rolling with those fidgeting toys. They would just check how he's manipulating the toys. And at the back of my mind, I honestly thought they would just say, no, he's not autistic. I knew we were going for those assessments because they wanted to make sure that where is he in the developmental aspect of life. And for me, I didn't realize that I was in denial until the day they put the stamp to say, I remember when they called me in, the doctor had been talking to me. I'd spoken to so many counselors. I was counseled. I was told a lot of things. You know how they prepare you when they want to give you results. And they said, with all the tests, the reports, everything that you have seen us doing all these weeks that you were coming twice a week, there is no doubt that Christopher is on the autism spectrum. The moment they said that, I started crying. I cried. I was actually angry at them because I felt like maybe when they were doing assessments, they should have at least done something to make sure that autism is out of the picture. That's how bad my denial was. I cried that day and started feeling like they didn't do much. They didn't do thorough examination. They slacked here and there, and maybe they needed again to do more observations and assessments. That's how I really was bad in my denial state. I cried. I remember I cried after they comforted me. They even looked at me but they said, but what is the problem here? You have been living with this child just like that. The only difference is that now you know that he is living with this condition. The difference is before you were wondering what is the problem. So it's not like we are telling you something that started today. You have already been living with him, with his condition. The only difference is that we are the ones who are now telling you what that condition is. All we are doing is to give you the name of the condition that he was born with. It did not sit well with me. I remember after crying, and then I got to speak again to the counselor there to keep my son somewhere. I spoke to the counselor. After that, when I felt much better, that's when I called my husband, and I was crying. And I remember when I called my husband, I even made him panic because him already was suspecting that the child needs some intervention, and he was waiting for the name of the condition. But on my part, I was waiting for them to say, okay, it's something that we can correct, and will eradicate it, will make sure we get rid of that condition. So for me, when they told me that that's who he is in this condition, there is no treatment for this, we will just support you with behavioral therapy, and so that you can manage to help him, and you can also be in a better position to support your son. So when I called my husband, he was actually shocked. I remember he couldn't even make up what I was saying because I was in shock and I was crying. I was in distress. And he thought maybe something worse than just receiving a diagnosis has happened. I remember I arrived at the hospital, I think after an hour or so. That's when he came, and he asked to see the doctors, because when he arrived, I even continued crying as if something, or maybe even my son has died. I think that's the impression that I gave him when he narrates how he felt when he came to the hospital. So we sat there, and the doctors started now explaining to him in detail, saying, no, it's not like there's something we've discovered today. We have just been assessing the child's behavior all these past weeks. You guys have been coming here, and we've seen that this is the condition that he's living with. This is how he looks at life. This is how his brain is wired. So it's not like we have now picked up another condition that we are announcing today. We're just putting a name to the behavior of your child, yes. So there's nothing to worry about. You continue living your life. Only that now you are living with awareness. Your eyes have been opened. Your understanding has been enlightened. Your ears now can hear from an autism perspective. Yeah. After that, and before my husband arrived, I'd already called some friends as well and some family members, and I was crying. I remember I called one of these family friend of ours, and I was crying, and they were like, are you alone? Are you okay? And honestly, most of the people that I called that day while I was still in the hospital, just after receiving the diagnosis, they thought I'm trying to convey a message that my child has died. The way I was crying, the way I was heartbroken, they couldn't even make sense out of what I was saying on the other end of the call. And we then got help. We were assigned a social worker from that day, and we started working with a social worker who came home, and they started putting things in place. And that time, Christopher had already regressed his speech. At some point, he was talking just before he turned 2, but at this time, he had regressed his speech. He was now not using words to communicate. So the social worker came home, taught us about the importance of social stories. We started introducing social stories, showing him. And because he had regressed on speech, he also had regressed the other things. Like when he wanted to use the bathroom, he would just not communicate, and that delayed him also. It made the potty training a bit difficult at the time, because we were not able to support him. We didn't know how best to support him. We just thought he was just one child who was slacking and all that. So the social worker came home. That's when we started getting support at home. The social worker would visit at home. Those Tuesday and Friday that we were going to the developmental clinic, they were now coming home. They started looking at our place of stay, advising us, this you need to get rid to make the place safe for your child and for every family member. That's how we got the diagnosis, and that's how I reacted. But with my husband, he was very happy. He celebrated. He was happy because he said, at least now we know what we are dealing with. Whatever research we're going to do research knowing exactly what we are dealing with. And one other thing that I want to mention is that I called one of my sisters back home, and I called her and I was crying, and she's like, why are you crying? My name means little sister. It's my vernacular language. Mine, why? What is the problem? Then I told her, they're saying Chris has got a disease called autism. I could not even tell the difference between a condition, a disease, or they say he has got something called autism. And then my sister, while I was on the call, she was like, okay, can you pronounce the word properly so that I can search it on Google? Then I pronounced, and then she typed in, and she's like, my name, this name that you are mentioning, it's even on the internet. I don't know why you are getting so worked up emotionally, because if it's something that is on internet, it means that people have researched about it. It means that it's something that is common. It's just that you didn't know. And to make matters worse, or to make things better for you, today is even World Autism Day. That's what makes me remember the day that he was diagnosed, because when I called this sister of mine, she searched on internet, she was actually, when she was going through just reading about autism, she was like, it's actually Autism World Day today, International Autism World Day. So you are actually in the right place, getting medical professionals, getting professionals who know about the condition. You're actually supposed to be celebrating that now you know. Remember, all these years we were wondering, what is the problem with Chris? Now we know what is the problem. So why should you continue crying? That sort of really calmed me down. And yeah, I every time I would get sad about his condition, I would remember that my sister told me that if a World Health Organization already knows about this condition, if there is something to read about this condition, then I definitely don't have to be more worked up emotionally about this condition. I just have to read more, look for information where it's available. So that's how we got diagnosis, and it didn't sit well with me. And there are some people where I was working who would ask me, so how is your son? When I tell them that they said he has got a condition called autism. What is that? Are you sure? Are they really sure? Sometimes then I will start second guessing to say, I think this one is right. Are you really sure? And then there are also some people from the people that I would go to church with, and they would say, no, are you sure that is the only thing that we should be concerned about? And some would even say to me, we are happy we now know the problem, what the problem is. I think the majority of the people that were surrounding me told me that, congratulated me. And they said, you know what, you're actually supposed to be celebrating, because now you know what you're dealing with. And for me, that was really a big wake-up call to realize that, okay, I'm having a situation here that some people can actually relate to. Even though I had never met somebody who had a child or who had a family member who is on the autism spectrum. I'd never met anyone. But just knowing that there is information out there. I remember when we went to the library, we would go to the library with my kids to borrow some book, our local library. I looked for a book that would just talk about autism. Of course, I did not get, but when I searched on the internet, on Amazon, I started realizing that there is actually books where I can read. And I started buying other other authors who had written about autism, some professionals, some family members who would just have written their experiences. For me, just to have a picture. I knew what I was going through, but I wanted to hear it from somebody who had also gone through that journey. And I don't regret looking for those resource materials. They really helped me. They really made me realize, first of all, I'm not alone. There's so many people who are mothers to individuals who are on the autism spectrum. And also it made me start thinking that I'm actually fortunate, because I know what I'm dealing with. These past 2.5 years, I didn't even know what I was dealing with. I was just guessing, maybe. So for me, getting the diagnosis really healed me. It equipped me. For diagnosis came with information. Diagnosis came with support system. Diagnosis for me came with empowerment. It empowered me to realize that, okay, now I need to snap out of this slumber of denial, because I have a child to look after and I have my own self to look after, so that I'm in a better position to look after this child. That is what really, really helped me getting the diagnosis and the things that transpired on the event, on the day that we got our diagnosis. So I thought, let me just come here and share and give you a picture of what really happened the day we got diagnosis. It's something that when I think of now, I'm actually thinking, but what was wrong with me? But I'm grateful that I had to go through that. Now, when I meet somebody who says, I have just received diagnosis for my child, or we have a family member who has received diagnosis, I totally understand what they are going through. And for me, it's something that you just need to support. Now, this is my word of encouragement to anyone who is watching this video. Maybe you are a teacher, maybe you are a community leader, maybe you are a church leader, maybe you work in a shopping center. If you come across somebody who has just received their diagnosis, or who is working towards getting the diagnosis for their family member for any condition, my encouragement to you is be the shoulder that they can lean on. I will always be grateful to the people that I met during that season who supported me, who some of them would just send me research materials. They were just there for me. I don't really remember people who when I told them what I was going through, who laughed at my situation. Most of them really came through, really tried. Whoever offended me during such season, most of them did it out of ignorance. But I can look back and see people who made an effort to understand what I was going through. My challenge to you is that be a supporting person. Be a supporting person and just be kind to people. Because in that season, it's not everyone that I was meeting that I was telling what I'm going through. Some people I was not even telling them that this is what I'm going through. So my challenge is, you might not know what people are going through, but even without knowing, just be kind. Whether you know what they are going through, whether you don't know, just be kind. Maybe you're dealing with a Nerissa back then who is waiting for a diagnosis, or who has just received a diagnosis, who is trying to find a way for a child, how to support their child. This is my challenge to you. Just be kind. Be kind and be there to support wherever you can. Even sometimes supporting, it can just be a word of encouragement. Sometimes it can be just checking up on those people. That can really go a long way during that season of where they are waiting for diagnosis, or they have just received a diagnosis. Just be there for them. And remember to share the materials that you'll be getting. I have so many people that just started saying, you know what, after you told us that there's this condition, we just developed the interest and started reading. So just be there and just be one of those people who will just be curious on their behalf. You never know what that can do for that person. Be kind. Be kind to everybody. Because some wounds, some conditions are not visible. They are not physically visible. See you in next video.